do you believe Wirecard? 28 billion disappeared. Just unbelievable. You know, every time I think about Wirecard, you know, there are no words. You want to say catastrophe, fiasco, a disaster. Literally, I mean, just undescribable. I mean, you would not expect this to happen, you know? Not in Germany, not in the 21st century, you know? Not after Enron and all the other scandals, right? You'd say, you know, people learned, but it seems not. You know, when I talk to my colleagues, all they can say is, we just can't believe it. A lot of people lost money. Actually, I lost money too. I was an investor in Wirecard. It is what it is. Well, today is a big day for me. I'm interviewing Dr. Danyal Bayaz. He's the head of the investigating committee in the German parliament, in the Bundestag, trying to figure out what happened in this Wirecard mess. So my interview is in the afternoon, and I mean, I have to say I'm nervous, but also very happy, right? I mean, you really want to talk to somebody who knows what's going on. So he's from the Green Party, very young guy, a Fulbrighter, extremely sharp, and I can't believe he actually agreed to this interview. We have a mutual friend, Sebastian, so he's also from the Green Party, so they organized it for me. Let's see what he has to say. Dr. Danyal Bayaz, welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you here. You are hopefully going to be fixing our German financial system, and a lot of hopes are resting on you. $20 billion have been lost. A lot of people have lost their investments, their savings, and people are angry. Now, what I find unusual about the German system is that there seems to be slow accountability. Meaning, if you remember, Germany did not make it to the second round in the World Cup in the last tournament. And what did the Germans do? They renewed the contract of the coach. In England, coaches are replaced every 2-3 weeks. There's a very fast accountability system where people take responsibility and change. That doesn't seem to happen the case in Germany, for example. So in the US, if you have a comparable scandal like Wirecard, when Enron went bankrupt, they closed the company. Arthur Andersen, a 100-year tradition of auditing firm, were closed. What do you think the appropriate German regulatory response should be for this Wirecard scandal?
First of all, Professor, thank you for your time and thank you for this interview. I mean, I'm quite sure that we have a special situation in Germany. And I want to bring to mind that one of the first sentences that the German Minister for the Economy, Peter Altmaier, has said when he was asked about the Wirecard scandal in summer was that he said, I could have imagined that something like this happened anywhere on the world, but not in Germany. And I got kind of angry about this quote. First of all, because I thought it was sort of arrogant. Second of all, I thought it was kind of naive because we are having scandals all the time. We're having the big tax scandal, so-called Cum-Ex. We had the big Dieselgate scandal in the German car industry, now Wirecard. So these are German scandals, not Italian ones, not French ones, not somewhere in Africa, no, in the middle of the industrial center in Germany. So that's why I'm kind of wondered why some people are surprised that we now face this scandal, because Wirecard is a symptom of deficits that we have observed over the last years in Germany. And up to now, we have started a special investigation committee to sort this out. There are many open questions, but some questions are clarified by now. And I think what we need to tackle going forward is especially three things. One is we need a crystal clear mandate for the BaFin, for the financial supervisory body in Germany. For example, like the SEC in the US or like the FCA in UK, with a new culture, also with people that are not only from law or from regulation backgrounds, but also ones that have the forensic tools, that have digital skills, that also have criminalistic thinking in order to take the job seriously. Second, we need to talk about the reform of the auditing companies. Higher frequency of rotation. We need to lift up the liability limit, which is a ridiculous amount of 4 million euros by now. And of course, we need to talk about an update of the corporate governance, especially when it comes to the quality of the supervisory board. This is something also where Germany lacks professionality. And last but not least, we need to take money laundering supervision serious. Up to now, it is not clear who is actually responsible for the case of money laundering and Wirecard. Was it the BaFin, the supervisory body on the federal level, or was it the regional government of Bavaria? This is still being discussed, and I think this is outrageous. But the main question, if I can add one more last sentence, the main question is, in this scandal, did the German government just fail in discovering this fraud? Or was it even protecting Wirecard as a potential national champion? This is a question that is unanswered. This is something that we need to sort out in the Special Investigation Committee, but there is some indication to it. Let's think of the Financial Times article on Wirecard that has been released 1.5 years ago. Actually, these guys, Danyal Bayaz, they were writing the truth. But what did the German government do? What did BaFin do? They did not go after Wirecard. They went after the journalists, and they sort of protected Wirecard by pushing for a short selling ban. And this is something. This is an open question, and this is something that we have to sort out in the coming weeks and months.
I absolutely saw your speech in Parliament, where you would like Dan McCrum and the Financial Times editors and writers to be thanked, or at least to be apologized to, and I find that actually to be really, really noble. Now coming back to BaFin, and you talked about BaFin. Again, in the newspapers, we see when BaFin was investigating Wirecard for wrongdoing, it seems 4 out of 10 BaFin employees were trading Wirecard stock. Isn't this outrageous? I mean, how is this possible?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. And to tell you another truth, I didn't know up to the scandal that this was even possible. And even some a very high-ranking official from the German Treasury told me that he didn't know up to this date. So this is really outrageous. Just think of it. There is a special investigation conducted by BaFin at Wirecard, and at the same time, employees all over the BaFin, also from the branch that is responsible for supervising this institution, are trading stocks. Yeah? I think they have clear compliance rules, and I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong in this case, but there is a major conflict of interest, and people, especially retail investors, that have lost a lot of money out there in the Wirecard scandal. And I get tons of emails every day from those people because also they are disappointed from the regulatory bodies and the politics in general. They are asking, how can this happen? Because we trusted BaFin. And going forward, I expect the Treasury and the BaFin to pose crystal clear compliance rules where it is not possible. And I'm not talking only about the president of BaFin and the board, but for each employee where it is not possible trading stocks or other financial instruments of companies that the BaFin is responsible for supervision, because it's a major conflict of interest and it costs a lot of trust in our financial system and also in the capabilities of the BaFin, the supervisory body. This is something we need to end right now.
Of course, fantastic. Exactly. I certainly understand the anguish of the investors. I myself lost money on Wirecard. It's interesting.
I'm sorry.
It's 3 years I teach Wirecard in the classroom. I've been interviewed by the Financial Times, by Bloomberg about Wirecard. But what happened was way beyond my expectations. That would never happen. And I think partly it's Ernst & Young, because we cannot be inside the company. We don't know what they do. But we have an auditor that certifies the financial statements to be materially correct. Now, I was an auditing professor before. I still teach auditing. When you go to a company, the first and easiest thing to check is to pick up the phone and call the bank. Is the money there? Yes, no. That's the first thing in an audit checklist. And for some reason, Ernst & Young seems to have called the bank, but took the bank's numbers from the company itself, so from Wirecard itself. And I find this to be ridiculous, because essentially at the end of the day, when you are checking, you don't listen to the company as to how you check. You get your checklist, you look at the company's balances, and you independently verify. Now my question is, in the US, when Enron failed, 60 billion evaporated, they closed down Arthur Andersen. Here, what is the fate? What should be the fate, or what should be the appropriate punishment to Ernst & Young to send a clear message, not only for Germans, but all of Europe, that financial shenanigans and lack of clarity and lack of focus in doing a diligent audit report is not allowed?
I agree, first of all, Professor, with your analysis. And what I experienced to see, and again, I don't see the full picture yet, but I see a lot of indications, is a system that I would call a system of irresponsibility, because up to now, nobody involved in this process anyhow is taking responsibility. Everybody's pointing with his finger at somebody else. And at the end of the day, the auditors play a major role in this scandal, obviously. I agree. In checking if there is money on a bank account, it shouldn't be that hard. And I'm glad to hear that this is being taught in a 101 auditing class. And that's what people should learn, yeah, in their first semester, so to say. Obviously, EY didn't take this serious, because this has been undiscovered for years, right? So this is a question that we will ask also to EY. I'm pretty sure that we will invite them as testees, as witnesses into the Special Investigation Committee. They have to tell the truth under oath. It's like in a courtroom when they're there, and we want to understand how can this happen. By the way, so again, EY obviously did some fatal mistakes, but on the other hand, they have also disclosed some irregularities towards APAS. APAS is the regulatory body of auditing companies in Germany, but this didn't have any consequence. And they also reported some irregularities to BaFin, and again, nothing happened. So this is something that we also need to discover, why nothing has happened. And this is what I mean when I refer to a system of a collective irresponsibility. But on a general level, this is something that we will take strongly into account in the coming months when it comes to the regulation of auditing companies, and also of the role of the Big Four, because we have an oligopoly, which is not healthy for the market.
No. And
we should find ways how to limit the power of these companies, and also how to break up this oligopoly. I can mention some reforms we think that I've mentioned earlier, speeding up the higher frequency of rotation, setting up the limit of liability. Also, which is an interesting point that we need to deep dive into, is the question of the separation of consulting and auditing, because it brings some conflict of interest. And again, because you asked what is the consequence, I'm very positive that public sector entities who are also hiring consulting and auditing companies for public sector entities in order to do some analysis and so on, they will very clear take into account in the coming months whom they are giving projects to. And I'm very open that we should also give more mandates to a medium-sized consulting and auditing companies, also in order to bring more competition into the market and also to break the oligopoly of the big four.
Of course. I coming to banking. Wirecard was a bank at the end of the day. It seems the case that Germany is the economic superpower of Europe, one of the major, strongest economic drivers in the world. They are great in tech, they're great in advanced manufacturing, they're great in cars. Somehow, when it comes to the banking system, you would easily say that if you look at the largest German banks, that the banks are sick, so to say, they're ill. They are not strong, they're not able to lend, and they're not able to drive economic growth. And it seems, reading the newspapers, that Mr. Olaf Scholz or the Prime Minister's office has not taken interest in this very important issue over a long period of time. So look at the US. We had the crisis, they had the crisis. They injected a lot of capital, they nationalized banks, they changed management boards, and then they restarted a fresh start with new banks. What is your role? And you represent the future of German youth and the German political system. Do you have a role in that?
First of all, I agree with your analysis. Looking backwards, it really made me sick and tired hearing all the stories about the debt problem of Italy and the problems of Italian banks and so on. This is a story that Germans tell themselves quite frequently. But when we look at the financial crisis 12 years ago, it was big German banks like Hypo Real Estate that went bankrupt. Commerzbank, the public, the treasury had to buy a public stake of 15% of Commerzbank in order to stabilize it. And many so-called Landesbanken, public banks, also where politics and public entities play a major role. Many of them really got into big trouble. So this was not an Italian crisis or something. This happened in the center of Germany once again. And the banking market here is special. We have a three-pillar approach. We have the so-called Sparkassen, we have the regional Genossenschaftsbanken, and we have private banks. And I would agree, the two biggest banks in this field, Commerzbank and Deutsche Bank, they are still struggling, finding a sustainable business model, shifting up their profitability, and so on. And up to now, I would say the German banking system has come quite okay through the Corona crisis, quite stable. And I want to remind that this has been also a result as a result of higher regulation towards higher capital buffers. Something that the industry has fought against for years. A lot of lobbying has taken place in this field, and by now we can say, it was the right thing to lift up the capital buffers. And the German Bundestag has released its financial stability report last week. Also, they are saying we are going through this crisis quite stable. But we are not sure when the Corona crisis might hitting again, which is actually the case right now, because the figures of infection are showing in this direction. This might become more severe to the German banks. But this is important to me because you mentioned also the future and the digital topics. Resilience of banks is not only a question of capital buffers, and it's also not a question of size, because we talk about mergers of, you mentioned Olaf Scholz, who has very strongly been in favor of merging German banks like Deutsche Bank or Commerzbank to create a national champion. I don't think this is the answer to resilience, because I think major driver of resilience is bringing digitalization to processes and to business model of banks. Banks need to adapt quickly to new scenarios. And that's where Germany is falling short. And actually, coming back to Wirecard, maybe this is one reason why some people were blind looking on Wirecard and the fraud, because they were happy to have a technology company, sort of technology company like Wirecard in Germany. And maybe this was a part of the problem, because we lack this technological approach. But last but not least, let me add one thought. Germany is very strong in B2B, it's very strong in manufacturing. But I'm very positive that we will only keep our competitiveness in this field when we tackle two broader trends. One is digitalization. Yeah, this is for banks. Think of digital payments. Think of autonomous driving in our car industry. But second is also about sustainability. And I think especially the German manufacturing field, like auto, like steel, like chemistry, they have huge challenges in meeting the Paris Agreement. And that's why I'm proposing, rather than spending billions of euros in this Corona crisis for lowering the value-added tax for a couple of months, is spending this in new resource efficiency and renewable technologies, because I think this is major when it comes to keeping our competitiveness in the future. So once again, digital topics and sustainability, I think these are the two broader trends for both the financial system in Germany and the manufacturing industry.
Certainly. Dr. Danyal Bayaz, you're a very busy person. I'm a university professor. I'll just ask you a closing question. My audience are full of hope. My audience are getting an education. My students, many of them look at you as a millennial who's going to break the old boys club network of Germany. What advice do you have for them to be better Germans and better Europeans?
Oh, that's a good question. And it's also always dangerous for politicians to come up with personal advices, especially to young people. But it's a serious question. And let me put it in these words. First of all, I see there is a young generation which is very political. People in universities who ask not only about how do we make good money, how do I follow a career, but what is the purpose behind it? We see tons of people marching on the streets for climate protection. I see many young people fighting for proper digital education, something that also Germany lacks, as we can observe in this crisis. And I see, and this makes me really positive, a very pro-European approach, because we won't tackle crises like Corona by a national state. It matters. It really literally matters what happens in Italy, what happens in France, what happens in Spain. And I'm very thankful also, I have to admit, that our Chancellor Merkel and the French Prime Minister Macron has pushed for a more European approach. And I think this is also due to that many young people especially were raising their voice for a European approach. At the same time, here's the but, at the same time, we see right-wing populists in every country of Europe that want to turn back the time, which are anti-women, anti-diversity, anti-innovation, anti-Europe. The national state will fix all the problems. We just have to build walls, to put it very simple. And I'm asking young people for standing up for the values of the liberal and open democracy and society, because I'm very much convinced that an open market and an open economy, something that also your students are pursuing on the one hand, and an open, diverse society on the other hand, are two sides of the same medal. Let me give you one quick anecdote for the end. Ugur Shahin is the founder of a company called BioNTech. They are the most promising. They have the most promising candidate in finding a COVID. How do you say?
Vaccine.
A vaccine. That was the word. Thank you. A vaccine. So this is the hottest candidate out there on the market. And Ugur Shahin came when he was 4. At the age of 4, with his father from Turkey to Germany as a so-called Gastarbeiter, started with nothing, and now he's built this company. And this is something that also tells me an innovation and innovative technologies on the one hand, and an open society on the other hand, belong to each other, and they are creating solutions to bring to drive society and to bring progress to society. And this is something that I will ask every student, every young people also to fight for and raise their voice when it comes to defending the values of the open democratic society. Not because it's only the right thing, this is also true, but because it guarantees us reaching progress in an open society, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Dr. Danyal Bayaz, you're a very busy person. We have a lot of hopes on you. Thank you for your time. On behalf of myself and the students, we wish you a super lovely day.
Thank you.
The interview is done. You know, what can I say? Inspiring. Bayaz is a great person, very genuine, very honest. I enjoyed talking to him. You know, you feel like a politician who has people's interest in mind, and that's so impressive. And actually, that gives you faith. You know, I mean, he didn't put the wrong note. He said all the right things. This is not acceptable. This should not happen in Germany. Things have been too lax. Talked about sustainability. Again, a hallmark of the Green Party. I'm very thankful. Actually, you know what? I feel inspired for once. The world is not such a bad place. All right. Hope you enjoyed the interview. See you guys. Bye.